we're going back to chapter 9.6, and you'll see why I introduced factoring by grouping. The book just explained it in a really complicated way without using factoring by grouping, but I think that this is a little bit simpler because there is a step-by-step process that we can follow here. Okay? So, alright, so here we go. This is a four-step process, and today we're going to learn how to factor ax squared plus bx plus c. Okay, before we used that product sum formula when we had a coefficient of 1. Here we're going to be given problems that have a coefficient that's different than 1. Okay, the process is going to be a little bit similar, but it's going to be a little bit more complex because the polynomial itself is more complex with that number at the front. Okay? So I like to call this AC factoring. Here we go. So we're given 5x squared minus 13x plus 6. Okay, here I have a step-by-step process. I want this in your notes because you're going to want to use this to help you with your homework and to help you during this chapter. Eventually you'll have this memorized, but right now get it in your notes and have it next to you when you do your homework in class. Okay? Alright, so we're given this polynomial. Step 1 is to find AC. A times C. That's why we call it AC factoring. Okay, your A is the number in front of your x squared, and your C is the number that has no x's. So here my A is 5, my C is 6. Sign matters. If this is a minus, you want to include the sign. But here we have positive 5 times positive 6, which is 30. Okay, from here, we're going to use our little product sum method. We want to find factors of AC that has a sum of B. Okay, so this is the process that we learned 2 days ago. So we want factors of 30 that add to B, which is your x term, negative 13. Okay, so 30 I have 1 times 30, 2 times 15, 3 times 10, 5 times 6. This is 31, 17, 13, and 11. Okay, so none of these work. None of them actually really work. But 3 and 10 give me a positive 13, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it negative 3 and negative 10, because negative 3 times negative 10 equals positive 30, and negative 3 plus negative 10 equals negative 13. Okay? Here's the difference. Instead of just setting that up in your brackets, what we have to do is we're going to rewrite the original polynomial, which is this guy, but we're going to expand this term, the bx, using the numbers from 2. Okay, so we're going to rewrite this whole thing, but instead, we're going to have 5x squared, we're going to use these terms, minus 3x, minus 10x, plus 6. Now, why can I do that? Negative 3x and negative 10x, if you add those together, you get negative 13x. Okay, these two are equivalent. They equal the same thing. But we have just expanded this term using the numbers that we found from step 2. Okay, negative 3, that's why the sum has to equal b. Because negative 3 plus negative 10 equals negative 13, so I'm allowed to do this. But this is going to help us set up so that step 4, we can factor by grouping. Okay? So we group first two terms, group last two terms. The first two terms, all they share is an x. So you pull out the x, and your leftovers are 5x and negative 3. Here, I have a positive and a negative, positive and a negative. So I have opposite signs, so I know I have to pull out a negative. We learned that yesterday. And then the only thing these two share is a 2. And then I'm left over with the 5x minus 3. Okay, remember if we pull out that negative 2, we're dividing by a negative 2, which is how I get the negative here. Okay, then both of these share the 5x minus 3. And then my leftovers are x minus 2. Okay? That is AC factoring. Let's try a bunch. How does that sound? Okay. Here I have 6x squared plus 13x plus 6. Okay? Step 1 is I need to calculate my AC. Okay? Which means I'm going to have 6 times 6, which is 36. Okay, step 2 is I'm looking for products of 36 that have a sum of my b, which is 13. Okay, so 36, I have 1 and 36, 2 and 18, 3 and 12, 4 and 9, 6 and 6. Which ones add together to be 13? 4 and 9. Okay, positive 4, positive 5. Step 3. I rewrite my original polynomial, but I expand this term using my 4 and 9. So I'm going to have 6x squared. Instead of writing 13x, I'm going to have plus 4x plus 9x. Okay, I get that 4 from here, that 9 from here, and then plus 6. Okay? These add together to be 13. So this right here was my original 13x. Okay? From here, again, it doesn't matter which order you write those in, because if you're doing factoring by grouping correctly, you'll get the same answer either way if you had 9x and 4x. Okay, so here we're going to factor by grouping. 6x cubed, that's 2 times 3 times x times x. 4x is 2 times 2 times x. So we share a 2x. Remember, it has to be the greatest common factor. My leftovers 3x plus 2. Here, 9 is 3 times 3 times x, and 6 is 2 times 3. We share a 3, a positive 3, and then I'm left over with a 3x plus 2. Both of these share that 3x plus 2, and then my leftovers are 2x plus 3. I now have two factors being multiplied together, so I'm done. Okay? Alright, let's do another one. Practice, practice, practice. Perfect practice makes perfect. I want to practice the right stuff. Okay, step 1. Find my A times C. My A is 2. My C is negative 7. You must include that sign. If you don't, it won't work. 2 times negative 7 is negative 14. So step 2, I'm looking for products of negative 14 that have a sum of positive 13. So negative 14 is negative 1 and 14, 1 and negative 14, negative 2 and 7, 2 and negative 7. Adding to positive 13, it was actually my first option. You don't have to list them all out. If you know right off the bat, go for it. I'm just listing it out so that you know what I'm doing. Okay, negative 1 and 14 equals positive 13. Okay, so step 3, I rewrite my original polynomial expanding this term. So I'm going to have 2x squared minus 1x from here, and then here is going to be plus 14x minus 7. Don't forget your x's. We are expanding this x term, so you need to have x's here. Okay? Now, I factor by grouping. So 2x squared minus 1x. The only thing these guys have in common is an x. So that's going to leave me with, if this is 2 times x times x, 2x minus 1. Okay, here, am I going to need to plot a negative over here? No. This is positive, this is positive, this is negative, this is negative. The signs match up, so I know this will be a positive number. What do they share? 14 is 2 times 7 times x, and this is 7 times 1. So we share 7. So I'm going to go ahead and plot a 7, and I'm left with 2x minus 1. They share my 2x minus 1. And my leftovers, x plus 7. Done. Okay? That's factoring by grouping. Alright? The last thing that you're going to have to do is, or not factoring by grouping, excuse me, that's AC factoring. The last thing that we're going to have to do is solve. Whenever you have an equal sign, you solve. Okay, so I have an equal sign. I also have a coefficient that's not 1. That means that I have to do my AC factoring. So step 1, I'm finding my AC, which my A is 12, and my C is negative 6. 12 times negative 6 is negative 72. Step 2, I need to find products of negative 72 that have a sum of negative 1. Right there. Okay, that's my D. Alright, so I have negative 1 and 72, 1 and 72. I have negative 2 and 36, 2 and negative 36. I have 3 will work. 3, negative 3, and, oh dear, 24. 3 and negative 24. I have 4, I don't think 4 works. Does that work? It should work actually. 4 and 18. Negative 4, 18. 4 and negative 18. Nope, that's not right. 4 and 13? Shoot, what is it? Oh, it is right. Okay, I'm smarter than I thought it was. Okay, 5 does not work. 6 and 12. Oh, we just did that one. 6, negative 12, negative 6, 12. And then last but not least, we have 8 and negative 7, negative 7 and 8. Whew, that's a lot. Alright, which ones have a sum of negative 1? I don't know if you can see this. Sum of negative 1 is going to be negative 8 and 7. Okay, step 3. I'm going to expand this. So I'm going to have 12x squared. Instead of writing a negative 1x, I'm going to write a negative 8x plus 7x minus 6. That's weird. Okay, equals 0. Minus 1. Oh. 9 and 8. That'll do it. Okay. 6 and negative 12. Okay, then we also have 7's not going to work. Then we're going to have 8 and negative 9, negative 8 and 9. Which ones add to negative 1? I'm going to have 8 and negative 9. So step 3, I'm going to have expand this. So we're going to have 12x squared. Instead of writing this guy, I'm going to use these numbers. So I'm going to have plus 8x minus 9x minus 6 equals 0. Okay, so we just expanded. This is our negative x right here. Okay, now I'm going to factor by grouping. 12, 2 times 2 times 3 times x times x. 8 is 2 times 2 times 2 times x. So we share 2 2's and an x, which means I'm going to plot a 4x. Leftovers, I'm going to have 3x plus 2. Now, I have positive, negative, positive, negative. I'm going to have to plot a negative sign here. 9x is 3 times 3 times x. 6 is 3 times 2. We share a 3. Then I'm going to have 3x plus 2 left over because I pulled out that negative equals 0. Okay, so these both share a 3x plus 2. My leftovers are 4x minus 3 equals 0. Okay, now we're going to use our zero product property. So all this you've been doing, now we're just going to tack on what we've been learning. So if I have 3x plus 2 equals 0 and 4x minus 3 equals 0. To solve, I subtract 2, ran out of space, 3x equals negative 2. Divide by 3, here I get x equals negative 2/3. Here I'm going to add 3 on both sides, so I get 4x equals 3. Divide by 4, x equals 3/4. Okay? And that